Welcome to The Disciplined Life. I'm Aria.
And I'm Coda.
We use our experience as a married couple living in a domestic discipline marriage to talk about the ups and downs of implementing authority structure and domestic discipline into modern relationships.
Let's do it. Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, welcome into the podcast. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the need to balance punishments with rewards and how rewards really do play a key role in positive outcomes when you are trying to change behavior. But before we get into all that, if you are not already, please subscribe, like this video, leave it a comment, let us know what you think about this topic and what we have to say. If you want to support what we do and you are looking for some bonus content, a link to our Patreon is down below and you can find all the details over there. So,
Let's do it.
So when you are looking to make long-term sustainable change in your relationship and really looking to modify behaviors, having a balance of rewards and punishments really is the key to making those things happen.
You want to positively reinforce what they're doing. You want to thank them. You want to acknowledge the hard work that they're doing. And, you know, in our relationship, every once in a while, I like to treat Aria to some of her favorite treats and different things like that, because I feel like that's important for her to understand that I appreciate the work that she does.
Because rewards really do offer that positive reinforcement where punishments give like the negative consequence to behavior, right? And so you really do want to find like that sweet spot of having enough positive reinforcement that your taken in hand feels encouraged and feels like their efforts are being acknowledged and that their hard work is paying off in some way, but also giving that negative consequence when it is earned, when it's deserved, but not in an unbalanced way to where they feel discouraged or feel like they only ever get that feedback when it is negative.
What you may find is if you find that you're giving a lot of punishments to your taken in hand, you may want to take a look at how much affirmation that you are maybe not giving to them, because it could be that the reason that you're giving a lot of punishments and they potentially are breaking the rules is because they don't feel like they're being noticed, that they don't feel like they are being encouraged, that they don't feel like that they are getting some positive reinforcement or getting treated to things. And so you might take a look at that, because that could be their way a little bit of trying to get you to understand that they want to feel appreciated and they want to be acknowledged.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in like anything in life, when you have that affirmation that you are doing well when you are, then that is going to encourage you to continue to do well more often. Where if you are only ever getting any type of feedback or acknowledgement in a negative way, if that's the only way that you are getting any type of communication about how you're doing, number one, not only is that going to kind of leave you confused because you never really know when you're doing the right thing, you only know when you're doing the wrong thing. But if you are looking for that connection, subconsciously you might start doing things to get any type of feedback, and even if that is negative. And so Coda's absolutely right. You have to have that positive affirmation. You have to have those rewards. You have to have that positive encouragement and feedback in order to encourage your taken in hand to exhibit the behavior that you want them to have.
The unfortunate thing is, because I know that, is because I've done a very poor job at times. I think I've gotten better.
You have.
But I've done a very poor job at times when we first started this of not giving positive reinforcement. And then it just seemed like, oh, why is Aria seem to be acting out more? Why does it seem that she has become maybe more argumentative, or whatever the things that was? And then after we've had some discussions, after some punishments, or even before punishments, I was able to realize, oh my gosh, I haven't given affirmation. And Ari will be the first one to tell you that I tend to have conversations with her in my head that we actually don't have in real life. And so I've had to really take a look of, did I actually tell her? Did I actually give positive reinforcement? Did I actually give her a treat or something like that she liked, or did I dream that, or did I have that conversation in our head? So make sure that you really pay attention to that, because in other words, don't just kind of push that aside. Really pay attention to if you're doing that or not, because if you think you've been doing it, but you really haven't, then that's obviously the reason why. So really pay attention to that. It takes a lot more effort, and it takes a lot more intentionality on your part to really make sure that you're paying attention to that you're giving affirmation.
So, we have talked on this podcast a lot about the punishment side, and I think that that's because when you're first starting domestic discipline, the real difference between having domestic discipline and having just a traditional relationship or a power exchange relationship, or any type of hierarchical structure in your relationship, the difference between that and domestic discipline really is the punishments. And so we tend to talk a lot about that because that's the part that people might not have experience with. It's a little bit more nuanced. That's the thing that people want to know more about. And so we're not going to talk a lot about punishments in this episode because we've talked about that, but we are going to talk more about how to approach rewards and how to give rewards. And so there's really, and you can tell me if you think that there's more than this, but I think
Okay.
there's really like two ways that you can approach giving rewards within your relationship. And that is, you can have either a reward system where rewards are earned, or you can be more spontaneous. Is there any other way that you can approach rewards?
Honestly, no. I think that's the only way, is structured or unstructured. I was going to say, but I'm like, that's the same as earned versus spontaneous. So no, I don't think so. I think you got it.
Okay.
I think it's the two categories.
And so an earned reward would basically be where the taken in hand gets some sort of point system or tally system for doing the tasks, for exhibiting certain behaviors. And then at the end of a certain amount of days or after a certain accumulation, then they will get a reward. And we use an app to track my habits called Obedience. And in the Obedience app, there is a reward tab where you can set it up to where you earn points in the app for doing the tasks. You can also set it up to where if you don't do the task, not only do you not get a point, but you lose points. So there's a lot of different ways within that app to kind of really tailor how the rewards work. And in that rewards, you can actually set certain rewards that your taken in hand would want, and then assign a point value to that. So if you look at your tasks and you're like, okay, my taken in hand can earn, 5 or 6 points per day if they do everything. And then it's like, okay, so maybe they really like going out and getting a special treat. You can assign that and say, okay, you can get a special treat after 30 points. That basically means like if they do everything, like if they are just on top of everything and do all of their tasks, they can get that reward after a week of doing everything perfectly. And so you might set it up that way. We don't.
And I will tell you real quick as a side note is that it's partly because I couldn't stick to it because I like to be spontaneous for her.
And we'll go into like the positive and negatives of each of these systems, but let's go through like a spontaneous reward is more about the head of household just being able to be more aware of the efforts and of the circumstances that the taken in hand is going through. And it's really just the head of household being able to look and acknowledge and then offer those rewards when he can see that a certain level of effort has been made or a certain level of accomplishment has been done. Or, in Coda's case, sometimes he'll offer a reward as an encouragement
Hmm.
if he can tell, like, I've had a hard day and I just kind of need a little bit of encouragement. I need a little bit of acknowledgement. Um, and so that's kind of how you can handle spontaneous rewards. It's the earned rewards. The reason we don't do it is, and this is kind of one of the pitfalls, is if you are the type of head of household that you really like to treat your taken in hand, and you really like to acknowledge them, and you like to, kind of give that encouragement in a more tangible way through something that would be considered a reward, it limits your ability to do that, because the only way an earned reward system works is if the taken in hand doesn't get the reward until after they've legitimately earned it within the system.
Right.
And that's what we found was the biggest pitfall for us within a earned system, is that Coda really does enjoy treating me, and he really does like offering me those little pick-me-ups to kind of help me along the way, if you will. And so I was getting things that would be considered rewards.
Before she technically earned them in the point system.
Yeah. And so if you're going to do earned rewards, you really do have to kind of stick to that structure.
Yes. And part of what happened there too is that I think Aria would agree, like she does enjoy when I'm spontaneous with those things. And so it was hard for her when I did try to toe the line a little bit and like be like, well, you haven't earned a reward yet. And then I could tell she would kind of get sad. She would be like, well, I really could have used a pick me up. And I really wanted to do that. And that was kind of one reason we decided to do away with the point system, is I was not very good at, first of all, like keeping to that. And also I wanted to meet her needs as they came up.
Because it was kind of discouraging.
It was, right. I was going to say that was the right word, is discouragement would come on your face. And I could tell that's how you felt. And again, I like to be spontaneous. I like to go, wow, you've done a really good job with this. How about, we do this, or how about I go get this, or something like that, because I want to have that spontaneity, because that really works for our relationship, where some of you may have that rigid, need that rigid, very specific point system.
Now, with the spontaneous rewards, the downside or the difficulty with that is it really does require the head of household to pay attention.
Which I need to do, by the way. That's a good thing. I need to do that.
Because when you are more spontaneous in how you approach giving rewards, it really is at the discretion of the head of household. And that means that he needs to look around and see what is accomplished. And so when Coda can tell that I've had a hard day, typically a hard day for me is that circumstances came up, maybe life stuff came up, and I am just having, some discouragement. But if Coda can tell that I've been really discouraged that day, but I still have done my tasks, he will reward those, even if those are tasks that are really solidified that I do every single day, and it's like no big deal most of the time. If he's like, wow, she really, had some life stuff come up, she's really kind of had a difficult time getting these things done, but she did it anyway, he will typically give me a reward for that. But that requires him to notice.
Yes.
When I've had a hard day, it requires him to notice, like, when I've done things, even when they feel difficult. And then sometimes he'll just say, after it's been a few weeks, maybe I haven't had any hard days, he hasn't really had to give a reward for encouragement or because I've done anything necessarily out of the ordinary, but he might just say, let's just go out. Let's have a reward. Because you've
Well,
done well.
yeah, a lot of times it's just because I felt like we had a really, really good week and she worked really, really hard. And I can tell that she stayed on top of things and she did her absolute best. And so we have an opportunity to do just something very, very simple, but us just be together and to go out and do something like she was saying. And so I feel the need to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be, although this would be a great way to do a reward, something that she really excelled at. It can just be, hey, you had a really, really good week. You abided by everything, and everything in the house looks great, got done. All of the, whatever the rules are, you did great. Let's celebrate that. That's an important thing to do. You got to celebrate small milestones as well as big milestones.
And that's a really important part too, is that you want to be generous in giving rewards, not to overlook bad behavior.
Right.
You definitely have to address bad behavior, but you know, rewards are not just there when you are trying to form a new habit. They're really there to just offer ongoing encouragement and positive reinforcement within the relationship because, you know, even when we are doing things that are solidified habits, having a little bit of a positive feedback to say, this is still appreciated, this is still important, and you are still doing a good job here. That's important. That's part of something that really breathes life into your relationship and really creates a connection and a bond. Um, I know that as a taken in hand and as a wife, I know that I really feel like that emotional draw into my relationship when I know that my contributions and what I am doing within our relationship is well received and appreciated. And positive reinforcement gives me that feedback to tell me that those things are happening and that I can respond in a positive emotional way to the fact that, yeah, my head of household, he notices. He sees what I'm doing and he appreciates it. And that just creates more connection.
Again, don't underestimate how important that can be.
So, types of rewards to give.
This is the best part. No.
This is always something that is a little hard to navigate because what people consider rewards are going to be different.
That's true.
And what you are able to do is going to be different. Because rewards don't have to be elaborate, although they can be. They can also just be normal everyday things.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to spend money at all.
Right.
Necessarily.
But you can.
You can,
and
exactly.
So you really do have to find something that's not only meaningful to your taken in hand, meaningful to your relationship, but within your means. And there can be small rewards and big rewards. There can be a balance between all of that. But the way you can determine what is a good reward for your taken in hand is, number one, have a conversation with them. Like, it's okay to talk about, hey, what's really meaningful to you? But I like to look at like the love languages. If you've never heard of those before, it comes from a book called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And it is a concept that has been used a lot. But basically, he breaks down the love languages, or I like to think about it as like things that people appreciate.
I definitely think that's a better way to describe them, because I don't really look at them as absolutes or this is exactly the way that people are, but these are some good guidelines to keep in mind.
It is a good guideline. They aren't absolutes like you were just saying, but it is kind of like you can look at these things and try to determine what are the most meaningful things to your taken in hand? When you have that conversation, they might not be able to really give you hard and fast, like, yes, these are the things that are really meaningful to me. And so talking through these love languages can give you kind of a broad road, and you can find the things that fit within that.
Also, think about that these things could change just because your partner may say today that they prefer words of affirmation and acts of service or anything like that. That could change the next day. Maybe they need something different because of what has happened, particularly in that day or in that week. So again, try not to get too boxed in with these, but these can be very, very helpful guidelines and a good starting place for you.
So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. And so words of affirmation are just that. They are encouragement. They're the good jobs, or I noticed that you did a really good job doing this, or oh, thank you so much for doing that, or I really appreciate it when you fill in the blank, right?
Which, by the way, I would say this is one that you really appreciate, that really helps you.
It is. It is. I do like kind of those words of affirmation on the regular. Um, acts of service. So, one thing, and I'm just talking about like the taken in hand side here. We could do a whole episode on how to use the love languages to feed
Yes.
into the head of household and his role, and maybe we will.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe we'll do that.
Um, but acts of service that you can use as a reward for your taken in hand is give her time to herself. Maybe say, I'll do the dishes tonight. Why don't you go take a bath? Or, you know, I'll take the, if you have kids, I'll take the kids out and I just want you to do something nice,
Relax.
relax, read, whatever it
Watch your
is.
favorite show, whatever it might be.
Um, or just a, hey, you've been doing a really good job. Let me take over this task for you. That way, it gives her a little bit of reprieve and it also is doing something for her. Also, acts of service could be going or making her breakfast one morning or letting her sleep in and taking over something. Those are all good, like, acts of service. Now, if you're taken in hand as like, acts of service really is something that feeds into me, they will be able to give you better guidelines of what that means for them. I'm just giving broad examples. Acts of service is not one that I really appreciate at all. Um, in fact, that's one that makes me really uncomfortable. So I don't have good advice with what would be meaningful because all of those things that I just listed, I'm like, no, that wouldn't really work for me.
But again, maybe it would for your spouse. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Receiving gifts. This is pretty self explanatory, but it can be small. It can be, hey, I stopped at the store or I stopped at the gas station on my way home because I wanted to reward you. And it could just be like their favorite little treat.
Yep.
It could be, um, you know, something that they've really been wanting, that they've been wanting, and you give it to them. And that's more of a spontaneous approach. It could be, if you're in an earned system, it could be something that they really want, and you set a certain level of accomplishment in order to receive
Points or whatever that might be.
exactly. So yeah, receiving gifts, it can be small, it can be big, but it is pretty self-explanatory. They are getting something that they have been wanting or that you know that they enjoy and you bring it. Quality time. This is one that is hard for me because I love quality time, But quality time for me is such a important part of our relationship that it's hard for me to see this as like a reward, because I don't think that, because if they're not getting a reward, what are you going to do? Like withhold quality time? Like that doesn't feel productive for a romantic relationship.
This is one area where we both were very much in agreement. It's we just, this is just part of who we are. We spend time together. We want to have quality time together. So for us, this is just kind of something that this is one of those that we just kind of toss aside a little bit. But then again, I don't want to discount how important this is to a relationship and how important this could be to a spouse.
However, even though we use quality time just as a way that our relationship functions, and withholding quality time would never, ever, ever be within the reward or punishment cycle, because that really would create unhealthy disconnect for us. If you wanted to use quality time as a reward, you could plan date nights, like special date nights, out to dinner, going to a movie, something that you would enjoy together that goes beyond just having time together. So you could work that into your reward system, but I would really caution not to take away quality time if it's not quote unquote earned. Physical touch. I love physical touch. That's one of my that's one of my main love languages. Again, this is just a function of our relationship. However, if you wanted to make it a reward, if you wanted to make it special, you could do things like a massage.
Oh, that sounds good right now. Let's do that.
That is a different video.
Oh yeah, sorry.
But I'm trying to think of other things that you could do as a physical touch, like as a reward. It's, again, this is just such a natural function of our relationship. It's hard for me to think about things that would go beyond just how we function daily.
And it's something that Arya, this is kind of her main love language, if you will. And so I try to really pay attention to that all the time, because if I was using it as a reward, it would really take its toll on her. In fact, it has in the past when I'm really not paying attention. Again, really pay attention to your spouse, because if you're not paying attention to what they need, there have been moments where it's come by where I didn't even realize, wow, I haven't given her any type of physical touch or anything and it takes a toll on her emotions. And so just make sure that you are paying attention of whether or not this should be a reward or this is just something that your partner needs.
And I was going to say, I think the things that we consider more just functions of our relationship, that's part of those daily positive feedback loops, right? So those words of affirmation, that physical touch, that quality time, those are my main love languages. That's how I feel loved and appreciated. And so Coda has figured out how to just make that part of our daily interaction so that I get that positive reinforcement every single day to say I am loved, I'm appreciated, and what I do matters. And part of our punishment system plays into that as well. So if you have a taken in hand that's really all about the quality time, something like corner time is going to feel so detrimental.
Yes.
And so if you incorporate that into your punishment system where it's like, okay, something happened that wasn't supposed to happen, you broke a rule, you were disrespectful, whatever it is, now you are going to have corner time before your spanking. And that creates more of that, like, okay, I did something and it caused a really big disconnect in our relationship. Now I'm being punished. But then afterwards, you really have to create that connection again so that it shows now you're forgiven, now you're reconciled within the relationship, and we can move on.
Yes, absolutely.
So really, you can think about these things too when you are doing punishment, not to create a punishment that is cruel or detrimental long term, but to create little things where it's like, okay, physical touch is your love language, but now we have this disconnect where, maybe that period between the misbehavior and the punishment happening for us, that can be several hours just because of schedules that, you're not necessarily interacting physically like you normally would because there isn't a punishment coming up. And so it's just, again, not being cruel, not withholding those things on purpose, but kind of creating a little bit of a system where it's like, hey, when we're in punishment, you're not getting these positive feedbacks.
Yep, that's a good way to handle that as well.
All right, guys, thank you for joining us for this conversation. We hope that this really helped you get some perspective on rewards and how to balance those with your punishments in order to create positive outcomes when you're looking to create behavior change. And like I said, I think we should do a whole episode on how to use the love languages to affirm the head of household in his role.
Yeah, for sure. And until then, start practicing rewards this week if you haven't already.
If you want bonus content as well as access to our Discord server, a link to our Patreons down below, check it out.
See you later.